Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Music Meltdown in the Album of the Year series. Today it is 1971. 1970 is great, but might argue 71's even better. I don't have as many fives this year. I only have one five for the year, but I got even more four and a halves. And really just running the gambit. There's amazing soul, amazing pop, amazing rock, some heavier stuff that's really cool in here, some more folky stuff that's really awesome. How are we feeling 71? Or is it just the same level of optimism all the way through?
Uh, well, at least through 71, it will be, yes. uh, and probably through at least 74, 75. Yeah. I mean, I think each year has its different peaks. And I don't think every year between 70 and 75 have the number of like five and four and a half and four-star albums for me anyway, that 70 through 73 does. Those 4 years are pretty spectacular. And there are so many iconic records that came out in those years. It's you could list 10 just iconic records that people should either listen to as, essentially defining their, the genre and their decades, or this decade, or own, if they're into physical media. It's fantastic. These are great years. Yep.
For sure.
I
And
feel
just
the
with the
same way
list,
you do.
absolutely. Just in the list of honorable mentions alone, the stuff that doesn't make it into the top five in this year is just like mind blowing. Some stuff that's just missing for me. Badfinger made it on last year, but straight up is just going to miss. Cahoots by the band I have missing. White
Mm.
Light by Gene Clark. Probably my favorite Gene Clark record missing. Future Games by Pete, not Peter
Mm.
Gabriel, goodness. Fleetwood
Fleetwood Mac.
Mac. Madman Across the Water by Elton John. Probably my pick for maybe the second most underrated record this year, actually. Muswell Hillbillies by the Kinks missing my list. Imagine by John Lennon, Ram by Paul McCartney, and Electric Warrior by T Rex was
Mm.
ever this close to making it on there. But I went with what I do think is the most underrated record this year, with Where I'm Coming From by Stevie Wonder. This is the record just before his quote unquote classic period. And while it does get appreciated in certain circles, I think it is just on par with those other classic era records, with me even preferring it over something like The Filling Is First Finale. I think it's really out there. It's really outstanding. He's branching away from what he was doing with the Motown pop era, but you definitely still have some of what you would later get on Talking Book and Music of My Mind. Just a really good, really cool transitionary record. Another one that I like a lot that I think is a little bit underrated is Ballad of Todd Rundgren by Todd Rundgren. Todd is just one of the great pop songwriters of all time that doesn't want to be a pop songwriter. He tries everything in his career to avoid pop, but whenever you just boil him down, he can write a melody and a harmony like anybody else. And the songs on this record, like Long Flowing Robe and plenty of others, just
Mm.
exemplify that to the max. Next up, getting a bit of funk on here with There's a Riot Going On by Sly and Family Stone. Just outstanding grooves, outstanding political messaging. Sly Stone, really one of the progenitors for just sort of this progressive movement in sort of America in of itself. Love his writing, love just the grooves and the band that he's got going on. Larry Graham, love him. Runner,
Yes.
runner up for me. Could overtake it in the future, but for now I'm going Blue by Joni Mitchell. Just an outstanding singer-songwriter record, one of the best to ever do it. Greatly performed, really tight songs. They never really sprawl on or move. She's kind of the opposite of Dylan, where she's very concise with her writing, but everything is very poignant and delivers a message as opposed to like drawing it out and getting every last detail that you can. But my winner, with arguably my favorite singer songwriter just in general, it's got to be, without a shadow of a doubt, Hunky Dory, David Bowie.
Mm.
Just incredible. David Bowie, probably the best artist in the 70s for me. Just on a pretty consistent basis, putting out at least very good records, ignoring pinups. Really just song for song. You got Changes, which is outstanding. Oh You Pretty Things is lovely. Life on Mars is an outstanding vocal performance. Even some of the more tossed off numbers that people don't remark, such as Kooks, Quicksand, Fill Your Heart, I think are great. I adore Andy Warhol songs for Bob Dylan. I always say it. I don't like Queen Bitch that much. It's good, but to me, it gets lost in this record because I love every other song. And it closes brilliantly with Bowie Brothers. Really, this is Bowie at his most intimate, his most sort of stripped back singer songwriter style of record. And it suits him brilliantly. And it's my favorite album, 1971. Thank you, Dory, David Bowie.
Sweet. You and I are going to have some major overlap this year. I would say, let's see. Okay, my honorables for 1971. Al Green. Al Green Gets Next to You. This is a great album. This is probably Al Green's grooviest album, I'd say. It doesn't have as many ballads as some of his later albums. And it is also the start of a great run, a great 5 album run for Al. He belongs on the Mount Rushmore of soul, along with Curtis and Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye. They all belong up there. A Titan. Um, love the Reverend Al. Paul and Linda McCartney, Ram. Um, great album from Paul, and his first great solo album, I think. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? Brilliant album. Iconic, classic. Everybody knows this album. And if you don't know this album, you should. Consider it required listening.
Rolling Stones number
um,
one.
huh?
Rolling
Yep,
Stones
Rolling
number
Stone,
one.
that's right. It says it's their number 1 album. That's correct.
Yeah.
Can's Tago Mago. Love this album. This is so good. It's borderline jazz in a way. We're talking, basically krautrock from 1971. Can, along with Neu and Cluster and Kraftwerk, were some of the pinnacle German rock, experimental fusion rock bands at the time. Um, Again, a lot of it's improvisation, but it is of the highest caliber. You've got Jackie Liebezeit on drums, Holger Zuke on bass. I mean, some of the best players. Just fantastic. The grooves. Boy, the Germans can be really groovy when they want to be. It's a great album. It's just a fantastic album. And there'll be more Can coming up as well for me. And then almost making the list is Black Sabbath's Master of Reality. Love this album. This album is probably where they perfect heavy metal. And it's primarily comes from Tony Iommi detuning his guitar down a step, either a step or a step and a half, to a detuning, and it changes everything. This album, it does sound like you're just rolling around in the sludge, and I love it. It's awesome. It is dark and it is heavy, and it is a classic. It's, Black Sabbath just killed it in the 70s. Oh, they were so good. Okay, my number 5 would be Joni Mitchell's Blue. I don't know if I've got much more to add, Adrian, from what you previously said, except that it is obviously her most confessional album. Chris Christopherson told Joni after he heard Blue, he's like, God, Joni, you're bearing it all. You should save something for yourself. And Joni, I think, was taken aback by how popular it had become. I don't think it was that, I don't know what it sold in 71. I should look this up, but I don't think it was that top. I don't think it was a top selling album for that year. But its status has grown, and it grew not long after 71. Joni's status is this album alone changed Joni's status as an artist, and people who thought she might be a little too folky before changed their mind after listening to this album. And I think she got a lot more respect that she deserved and credit that she deserved. And you're right, it is more concise than Dylan. Joni's more musical than Dylan. And she's also a great lyricist. So she has a lot going for her. And this album is pretty spectacular.
For sure. If I may interject there, because I just looked it up while you were
Yeah.
speaking. It
Yeah.
appears that the peak position that Blue hit on the albums chart was number 15 in the US
Yeah.
and number 9 in Canada.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
So it did very well, but it did, wasn't a top 10 album.
yeah,
Now any other year it might have been. 71 is such a strong year. But it is, I love Blue. It's this, I think, is an essential album. If you love Joni, then you've got to have this album. Um, my fourth position is going to be Alice Coltrane again with Pharoah Sanders, Journey in Satchidananda, which is Satchidananda was her spiritual leader, her spiritual guru. And this album again shows up in like Rolling Stones top 500 albums. And many more from not only this year but from this decade, and just for the history of recorded music, period. And there's a reason for it. It is almost you can listen to it and feel different after the end of it. Again, jazz, it's Alice playing piano and jazz harp. Charlie Hayden plays bass on this album. He's fantastic. Not through the whole album, but through a couple of songs, I believe. Um, Recorded in her home that she had with John Coltrane. It's an amazing album. It's a wonderful album, and this actually this might be for either non-jazz fans and or people that want to get in or that want to start diving into jazz to some degree. This would be a good accessible jazz album, just like Miles Davis kind of Blue, or even her late husband's A Love Supreme. I think this album is just as good as those and stands up right along with them. Number three is going to be David Bowie's Hunky Dory. I love it. Hunky Dory is my favorite Bowie album. Yeah, it's just a brilliant album. And Queen Bitch, I think I think you're right. It sort of stands out on this album. I think it's proto Ziggy for sure, right? If Queen Bitch had been on Ziggy Stardust, it would have fit right in with everything else, I think. And uh, Ziggy Stardust was released very shortly after Hunky Dory, within less than a year, I believe. Hunky Dory is just through and through a wonderful album. It's the first time Bowie, I think, made a consistently great album, and his songs had progressed to the point where each one has become, basically associated with Bowie, from Life on Mars to even the lesser known ones that you talked about, Andy Warhol, and of course Changes, which is huge. My number two, Sly and the Family Stone. There's a riot going on. Again, Larry Graham, unbelievable. It's Sly was in the middle of or was in the well, he wasn't even in the middle. He was in the start of a multi-decade long cocaine bender. And very he'd become very insular. The Family Stone doesn't make a complete appearance on this album. Some players just up and quit. Sly had drawn into he'd become withdrawn, he'd drawn into himself. But then you've got you got A Family Affair off this album, which was a huge hit for him. Really big hit. So even though on this album Sly is deconstructing funk, something he helped to popularize and something he helped to create. He's taking it apart and then piecing it back together in very interesting ways. It's a great album. Some of the songs, they change time signatures so quickly you just can't even count them, and it's so subtle. It's amazing. It's an amazing album. And then my number one is going to be Funkadelic Maggot Brain, Eddie Hazel on the lead-in track. It's one of the greatest guitar solos I've ever heard in my life. And I think Eddie Hazel was a peer with Jimi Hendrix in terms of his technical mastery of the instrument and his ability to convey emotion and feeling out of that instrument. I love listening to Eddie Hazel's guitar. The whole album is fantastic. what right before Eddie ripped out one of his solos, George Clinton told him, Eddie, play like your mama just died. And Eddie does just that. Very I don't know what, there's just so much feeling in his guitar playing, so much passion in it, and you can hear it. It just exudes through. So that's my number one for 71. Again, a great year. Great year for soul, R&B, funk, rock, all of it.
Yeah, we were just talking about it earlier. That record, Maggot Brain, just sort of Funkadelic as a whole, I want to like them a lot more than I do. And the real thing that just pushes Maggot Brain back for me really is the production. Because in comparison to something like, for example, the Stevie records or like the Curtis records from around the same time, it's just so much more grungy and more lo-fi in comparison.
Mhm.
I get gives it its own identity. It's more the soul mixed with the rock and the funk mixed with it,
Yes.
where it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know. It just I want to like it more than I do, and we're 1-to-1 in records I've heard and ones that I haven't now. So there we go.
Okay, good. Yeah. Just ignore it for a while, come back to it, say, maybe I'll just give this one more shot. Because it is a creeper of an album. It can be, anyway.
Mhm. I know the first Funkadelic record I actually heard was their 74 one. And I really liked that whenever I heard it. So that could be part of why I'm struggling with the earlier ones. So but with
Okay.
that being said,
Which is more funky, I think.
for sure.
Certainly. Less rock, right. Less rock, more funk.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well, that being said, I hope that you all enjoyed this conversation upon 1971. We'll be back for 72. And with that being said, I will see you later. Bye.